Next on Rugby Wrap-Up's MLR Weekly, General Manager and Head Coach of the Team USA Men's 15s program, Scott Lawrence, John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News, and Pat Clifton of the College Rugby Show. Rugby Wrap-Up's MLR Weekly brought to you by Sheehy Auto Stores. It's easy at Sheehy. The Pig and Whistle, New York City, the world's best rugby pub. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle.
There is a massive responsibility on the 23 that are privileged enough to step out on that field today.
Let's get it all started with Rugby Morning's Coffee Break with John Fitzpatrick calling in from the Southland, Los Angeles, greater area of Los Angeles. John, welcome back to MLR Weekly. What do you have for us?
I'm going to ask you the questions this time because you put out quite an interesting episode last week that had a lot of people with some strong opinions and a lot of emotions there between whether or not Canadians should be considered international players in MLR. But man, I'm going to ask you a question. What have you heard from others since you put out that episode last week?
Well, a lot. You know, a lot of people asked me what my sources were, and I can't disclose my sources except to say that they're highly vetted sources. And at this point, everything is still movement. Everything is still open to change. There is that date in November where there's a capital call where we will know pretty much everything. But as for now, things are looking on the up and up. And it all started with that win by the Eagles over Samoa, which many of us, including yours truly, didn't think was going to happen.
Two things in there. One, yes, the men's Eagles being Samoa and qualifying for Rugby World Cup. Of course, that helped. Certainly Canada qualifying for the Rugby World Cup as well. How real is the potential, the possibility here of World Rugby funding or partially funding a Canadian side to enter into MLR in the 2026 season? And what are you basing that off of? What conversations are you hearing? How legit?
I'm basing that on the reality in front of or the opportunity presented by the possible change from Canada being domestic players, Canadian players being domestic players, to international players. Because then you have a good core of players that are MLR tested and have played international matches, and they can go right to a team. And
that's great. That takes money. Who's going to put up the funds to field this side? Is it World Rugby? Is it a group of wealthy Canadian business people that want to set some money on fire? What? Seriously,
I don't have the answer.
Where's this money coming from?
I don't have the answer to that question other than...
So then this is not real. It's not real. It's just, this is all wishful thinking.
No, there is World Rugby money would have to be involved in that.
It's been 4 years since there was a Canadian MLR team. So okay. All of a sudden, we're going to have one coming out of the wings?
Yeah, because they qualified for the World Cup, and there's been a model called the Anthem in existence in the MLR, and World Rugby was also under the gun for not doing the same for Canada that they did for the USA.
I'm just skeptical. I want a Canadian side in MLR, but where's the money coming from to fund this and make it happen?
Fair enough. All right. On that note, John, I want to thank you for coming on. John Fitzpatrick. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Digs like a demented mole there.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
And we're back with the College Rugby Corner and the College Rugby Show's Pat Clifton, the Pat Clifton. Pat, welcome back.
Pat Clifton on the social media. But thanks for having me, Matt McCarthy. Let's talk some rugby. It was a big weekend. The Eagles, huge win.
Big win. And, they're all, former college players wherever they went, or university players or overseas. But more importantly, we're talking about the next crop, and we're talking about what's in front of us with college players now. What was exciting for you last weekend, Pat?
Look, there was a ton of great rugby last weekend. St. Bonaventure Queens is probably the game of the week, right? Like, these are two national title contenders, two teams that we very likely will see potentially play again in the playoffs later. And it was a huge clash, everything you want, right down to the last play. Bonnie stealing it 32-29 to set the early marker. It was a huge win. They've got Cone Webb there, playing great as a fly half and really growing into his role with his new team. And it's great to see him perform so well. A true blue American kid from North Carolina and leading the Bonnies. They're looking really, really good this early season over Queens. That was a huge win. And then we also had Walsh over Wheeling, 26-24.
Stunning.
Walsh, the Cavaliers, formerly Notre Dame College.
At Wheeling.
At Wheeling, that's right. Wheeling is reeling, to steal your line. You get beat up for that in the comedy world, I think. But yeah, that was a huge win. Wheeling is still finding its feet, got some new players, new coach, Max Hamilton, as Mike Geibel has stepped up to the dean of students there at Wheeling. So new head coach, and the Cardinals take it on the chin a little bit. Louisville Cardinals, speaking of the Cardinals, beat Bowling Green. That is a huge men's D1AA rivalry match. Who's going to win the MAC every year comes down to Louisville versus Bowling Green. They split all the time. This year, Louisville, also under a new head coach, they get the win over Tony Mazzarella, who has been the coach since the dawn of time.
Yes.
Bowling Green. And also a huge win. Number 10, Boise State, beating number 1, Montana State in men's Division II. Those were some of the huge results from the weekend.
All right. Now, what do we got ahead of us, Pat?
That's it. We got some big ones. Kentucky, Indiana. That's a huge rivalry match. A lot of kids know each other growing up.
Will Mark Cuban be at the game?
Huh? That's a great question. I do not know. I would love to know. But social media, tell us if he's there.
Because he's a Hoosier, folks. He's a Hoosier rugby guy. So
huge Hoosier benefactor. Really fuels them and has given a lot to the program. And that's part of the reason why they're so dang good. Also on this team, Peyton Wall, Will Chevalier's little brother, and Tommy Hannon, whose brother was another Hoosier legend. So they're really good. Kentucky D1AA title contender. That's going to be a huge match. Marion versus Lindenwood. This is one of those rare CRAA NCR crossover matches. Lindenwood, very, very good. Marion, a much younger program. They've been baking for quite a while. They're starting to mature. This is a big, kind of non-con game with not a lot of consequences for them. It should be a good test. And then on the women's side,
and
Harvard
Pat, sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify, Marion is not a 70s sitcom wife's name. It's an actual school.
That is the Marion Knights. They're actually an NAIA football powerhouse there in Indianapolis. Great program. John Harley's doing a really good job with them, and they're a contender. So we'll see how good they are this weekend against the Lindenwood Lions.
And what about the ladies, Pat?
Absolutely. I mean, it's Women's World Cup time. We can't not talk about the ladies rugby, and we've got Harvard, Dartmouth, undefeated Ivy League rivals going head-to-head this weekend. Oof. Harvard looks like an unstoppable force. Is Dartmouth an immovable object? We'll see. It's a huge game this weekend. So, I can't wait to see that one. That one's going to be all over ESPN Plus, so make sure you
That's going to be fun, that one. But now, as per the Rugby Odds, our partners, I need you to give us 2 picks.
All right, I'm going to go with Harvard over Dartmouth. I like them this year. I think they look really, really good. And then I'm going to go with Kentucky over Indiana.
Thank you, Pat, once again, for an enlightening round of the Rugby Corner from Pat Clifton of the College Rugby Show. We'll be right back with Scott Lawrence, the head coach and general manager of Team USA's men's 15s program, after this. This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? And we are back with the general manager and head coach of the USA Men's 15s program and kind of overseer of the Carolina Anthem, Mr. Scott Lawrence. Scott, let's get right to that sound, that soothing sound that we can hear from the Adirondacks to the Rockies to the San Mateo Mountains or the Sierra Nevadas, is that collective phew from USA Rugby fans and World Rugby fans and executives everywhere after you guys got the job done and you qualified for Rugby World Cup 2027 in Australia. a very positive moment. It also keeps your plan of Moonshot 2031 in orbit and alive. How much of a relief are these developments?
I think it's it's something that is a milestone along the way. So you look at it just like that. It's a milestone. It's something we needed to get done. Didn't happen in the timeline we wanted it to, but it did, and we came out of it with what I think is a really exciting next 6 years. I mean, we've got 27 World Cup. We've got a 28 Olympics. We've got an American coach in charge of the sevens who cares about American development and puts his time and the program's resources to where it belongs, which is towards the players. And I'm looking forward to working with Zach towards that. And I'm looking for, and I think we need to look at it all as one thing: 27 World Cup, 28 Olympics, sevens performance, and then 31 World Cup. So a lot to do going forward.
All right, so you're mentioning Zach Test for the folks at home, the former seven-star that's now heading the sevens program, and you have that working relationship. But now that you've qualified, and we're automatically, and I don't know if fans know this, but since we're the host nation in 2031, we get an automatic bid. There's a lot of pressure off of you. Do you view this as a time to tinker, perhaps?
You're always trying to grow players, and you've got plans for that. The thing is that growth sometimes requires you to bring in different players who you go, they're past it or something like that. I'll use an example. Well, LaRue came into camp this week with the Springboks. Okay, he's not going to play in the test match. He's 36 years old, but his experience in the squad and his ability to develop was important towards the development of the Springboks, who made massive changes in their roster, way more than I've ever made, and came back with a historic victory in New Zealand, right? So my point around that is that it takes coaches, it takes different players, but and I hate to use the word tinkering, because what we're doing is we're trying to be as intentional as we can around bringing young players through that are going to be in 27 and then eventually starting to build the base towards 31. The Eagles is not the only place to develop talent towards 2031, and so we need to be looking at the supply. So far, we know the demand. We have a demand on 27. We maybe, if there's an announcement, we may have demand in our professional league. If that's going to be the case, then we have to look at the supply. And World Cups are a place to grow young players, but Test rugby isn't the place to throw a guy in after 6 professional games and see how he goes. There's better ways to do it.
So you're an American sounding coach. Does it matter what the guy sounds like?
No.
In terms of an accent?
No, I think what we find is, Dylan Fawcett, the butcher, there's no one more grateful, more committed to our country, is raising children here and than he is. So, and that's what our country has been founded of, is it's a melting pot. So I don't take anything from that. I look at each player as they are and as what they can contribute to the team. And if you have an American accent and you don't fit with where we're trying to go culturally, or you don't, and you don't fit, then you won't be with us. But if you are, then you will.
All right. At the risk of you squeezing my head like a pimple the next time you see me, let me ask you some of the going to the dentist kind of questions. You got some folks like MLR executives that had their feathers ruffled by assistant coach Nick Easter talking about teams leaving the MLR for the URC and or Super Rugby, feeling it underestimated the time, commitment, and money the MLR owners have spent so far. What's your take on that and the call by some for his dismissal? I
didn't know there was a call for his dismissal. Where was so you have to tell me, what was the issue with what Nick said?
I've had conversations with some MLR executives and owners, and they were a little bit ticked off that the guy was mouthing off, and I didn't view it that way personally.
I mean, I think with these things you have to be aware that sometimes what's printed is not always what's said, or there's context missing. I think there's part of it. Where do you think the URC or the Super Rugby, or where do you think that came from?
Probably initiated with some of the owners.
So don't be upset by something you started. That's my, I think with Nick, I think, I probably would have handled it differently. He knows that. We've had a chat about that. But he's just responding to what's already out there. But he didn't start the fire, so to speak. He probably poured a little gas on it. So, it's a small community. We all need to work together. But, I think the national team is, one thing I've learned and really appreciated over these last few months is that it's not our job to say, thank you, sir, may I have another? It's our job to try and win for the country. And, sometimes we have to have disagreements. There needs to be conversations around where we're going and how we're developing. And we need to either agree to disagree or agree to agree, but we need to commit either way to a path here. So there's a lot of work to do.
Let's go back to the road to the World Cup with me playing Reddit poster / Monday morning fly half / sports radio call-in fan ranting. Here's three of them.
Okay.
Playing a younger player at fullback that played center in the MLR season, not using a starter from a Major League Rugby team and instead opting for his backup, and using two players that were back row players as MLR locks.
So what I'd say is there's selections are dictated by a number of things. Performance, injury, availability, and in the case of things like the PNC, tournament rules. So you can only carry 28 players. And if a player is injured, he cannot return. So if you have a player that's injured for 2 weeks in the course of a 3-week tournament, and you want that player back for week 3, you're going to have to play people in different positions. That's just the nature of the beast. You have 28, and you have to cover your front row, which means that you need 9 of those 28.
Yeah.
Need to be front row, at least 8. I think you look at all these things, but if you want to talk specifically about Eric, and I don't want to expose Eric because we still have test matches to play this year, so I'm not going to talk about Eric. Eric knows his strengths and the things we want him to work on, but I'd say, he is a special talent. He's got the right pace. He's got a long kicking foot that's becoming more and more accurate. He's brave in the air, and so he needs to progress. We didn't think he was ready to be an international center, and all those other things: injury, availability, tournament. So it's a multivariable equation, so to speak.
All right. How about the second one from our Reddit / ranting fans? Not using a starter from a Major League Rugby team and instead opting for his backup.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we had an advisor and Andy Friend with us, and Andy says coaching is nothing but an opinion. Tom Billups used to say there are great club players, but they're not internationals, or it just fits within a team. So a lot of things go into it, but again, coaching is an opinion. Selections are an opinion, and so again, it's not thank you, sir, may I have another, because a coach selected a player in a position, and I have my own opinion.
How about the back row guys playing lock?
We look at it. I'm really excited about Nafi Mafu, but he only played 3 games, I think 4 games over 2 years, so he wasn't ready to come in. He had just signed with Montbon, and they were going to play him in the first few rounds. But I think we're aiming to get Nafi back in November. If you look at a guy like Rick Rose is probably the best lineout caller that we've got in our ranks. We've been pulling him along. He had that injury earlier in the year that I think just put him back a few months on his physical development to be able to compete at Test Rugby. But I'm excited about the future from him. CC Mahoney had, he was playing with a hand he needed surgery on for the last 2 months of the MLR season, and we can't take a guy because of various reasons that we have to pay for the surgery if we take a guy in. We had guys that played out of position. Jason played lock all year when he came in. Sam Gala, 30 minutes into the first game of the test season, and he does a shoulder. So again, it's injury, availability, and performance.
Changing gears. I know this question is not part of your job description, but you're locked in the American rugby landscape. You've got an analytic mind. You're a smart guy. How do we get more African American players in the MLR realm and the USA Rugby player pool?
I was having a conversation with Simon Cross from Old Glory yesterday, and then Will McGee from the Hounds last night. And the biggest thing that we can do is to build from the middle out, and it comes from coach development. And that's not subverting your question. What I'm saying is I became a mathematics major because I had a mathematics teacher who got me excited about math when I was in high school. And so it had an impact on my life, and I was decided to pursue that into college. So my point around that is coaches are so vitally important in developing them completely. I think it's like a coach asking players, what's the answer here? And it doesn't matter what question they answer. The answer is always communication. What can we do better? Communication. What can we do? Right? It's always the answer. Well, I think the answer here has got to be our coach development. And I think as we look here, going into the next 6 years and funding models and all you've heard around that, it is a big pillar that I think we need to look at. I think we need to look at those coaches in the right areas, and then helping them with coaches who can prepare players for the next level. There are scholarship programs. There are programs that are endowed and competing for athletes. So there is demand there, but I think we need to continue to grow the coaches.
Final question. From the outside, it looks like you're in a thankless, pressure-packed situation. Are you able to enjoy any of this?
Yeah, I enjoy all of it. And I was in August of last year, I just had a real reflection where I just felt like I got a calling to this is the commission for me was to do this. This is the role that God wanted for me. And he kept reminding me when things got tough in the last 3 months, this is my commission for you. And so I'm enjoying it, knowing I'm fulfilling that. And so I'm going to ride it as long as I can.
You keep the horse blinders on when you're going through the mud and hope you get out on the other side. And you guys, you got the job done. You qualified for 2027, which everybody was just ready to just lynch or hang you or whatever. And you did it. So congratulations, Coach. It's a big relief, and I'm happy for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And, there's a funny thing, you don't know it if you don't read it. And so, I stay off of that social media. And Marcus Aurelius said, it's only offensive if you're offended. So I'm used to it, but it's part of the gig.
All right. Scott Lawrence, much appreciated. Thank you, sir. We'll be right back with Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News after this. You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now. And we are back, and we're welcoming in again Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News / Ray's Rugby. Bryan, it's been a week. How are you?
Well, it's been a weird week. I mean, we're at the highest of the highs for our Canadian women's team, and then in the MLR, as far as I'm concerned, we're at the lowest of the lows. So I don't really know where I sit. It's a weird space to be in right now.
Last week, with the rumored announcement that Major League Rugby will go to 5 international slots per team in their starting 23, and Canadians will now be considered international players. No longer will they be considered domestic players.
During the week, I've certainly seen lots of comments on social media along the lines of, what difference does it make whether it's a Canadian player or a South African or what do we owe Canadian rugby or anything like that? What value are Canadian players bringing to MLR? I mean, how am I supposed to feel good about those comments?
Why do the MLR owners owe Canada anything?
Have the Canadian players not contributed anything on the field to those teams? Is
Well, they got
Lucas
paid
Rumble?
for it.
Is Lucas Rumble, the captain of the Chicago Hounds, not contributing anything to Chicago rugby by playing well for them? Is he just, whatever,
But
just another
they
player?
can hold on to Lucas Rumble using an international slot.
Yeah, if they make that decision, is that the decision they're going to make comparing? I mean, and again, last week I pointed out that Rumble is one of the very few Canadian players who might actually hold onto their spot. But I mean, what about the rest of the Canadian players? Have they contributed nothing? Did Bill Webb contribute nothing to the financials of MLR in the 5 years that the Arrows were in existence? He was there longer than some of the owners are there now.
He did indeed want those Canadian players as international slots so that he could have all the Canadians.
I guess I would differ from Bill on that one then. And then I'm not sure Bill would have foreseen, the ending of the Arrows. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. All I can say is that by shutting out the Canadians like this, I mean, there really aren't going to be very many left. And from my perspective, it makes the league enormously less interesting. If Canada is at all a market you're hoping to expand to in the future, and I really thought that was the future of MLR, was to be a North American league supporting the whole ecosystem again, I just don't see this as making good business sense. But that's just me. I'm a Canadian.
It's an opportunity. What's like that phrase about when there's don't let a disaster go to waste or something along those lines? This is a disaster in terms of Canadian rugby if they don't come through and get a team in. And there's every opportunity to get a team in. Where's the private investment? Where's Rugby Canada weighing in on this? And how about World Rugby? Because it's an anthem type moment.
I don't disagree. Again, I totally accept the criticism against Rugby Canada, who have done next to nothing in advancing senior men's rugby for years. How long did it take for us just to change the coach? So I don't have any defense for them for sure. And at the same time, it's probably fair criticism to say, why hasn't the Canadian rugby public or certainly there's lots of guys who are doing well in business who have links to rugby in Canada. Why haven't they come together to put some team together? I can accept that criticism, no problem. But I'm just looking at this as a whole and where things are, and from my personal perspective, again, I just can't get behind it. And it just makes my interest in the league drop dramatically, and that's just the way it is. That's just a fact.
That's a shame because I know that you're like me. We're both rugby whores, and I had to shift my allegiances to different teams when New York went out. And I haven't really found a home yet, but I still find a home watching rugby, professional rugby. And it's not far from where you are. It's, you could make a road trip. I'll meet you there and we'll talk about this some more. But, we'll continue this conversation or not, depending on how you feel about it. But let's hope that maybe something happens and a Canadian team transpires. That would be cool. And on that note, Bryan, we are unfortunately out of time. I want to thank Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News /Ray's Rugby, John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, Scott Lawrence, head coach and general manager of Team USA's Men 15 program, and Pat Clifton of the College Rugby Show. And thank you for tuning in. Make sure you check out the Rugby Odds this week. It's great. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you don't mind, and please sign up for our weekly newsletter and our American Red Cross blood donor team.